Welcome back to Fox 11. Coronavirus cases, hospitalizations, and deaths continue to drop here in the United States. And we celebrated a much more normal-looking Memorial Day weekend. So let's get the very latest on the pandemic, where we stand this morning. Dr. Ernst von Schwarz, he has been such a great resource all year for us when it comes to the pandemic, and he's joining us live via Zoom. Good morning, Dr. von Schwarz. How are you?
Good morning, Joe. Thanks.
So Americans were out and about over the long holiday weekend. A year ago, this would have scared a lot of health officials, but we seem to be in a much, much better place now.
No doubt. I mean, if you walk in the hospitals right now, it looks like never, ever anything might have happened before. I mean, the only difference right now is that people are wearing masks, but I mean, in the main hospitals where I'm going to, for example, several months ago, there were hardly any non-COVID patients. Now it's really just a handful of patients with COVID admitted, but the numbers are going significantly down. It's not an issue for us right now at all.
That's amazing to hear, and it's good to see it from the healthcare side of it as we kind of get the consumer side more, especially with our everyday lives. But healthcare workers have dealt with so much over the past year. Let's talk about vaccinations, because the rate in California has been great, and it's really been making a big difference. The entire country, really, the United States has been a leader in the vaccination effort.
Absolutely. I mean, in California alone, 51% of the population has been fully vaccinated. And I think that's the main reason why we see so less numbers nowadays. And that's the same for several Western European countries now and for the rest of the US. I mean, vaccination still is the #1 key to prevent further spread of the infection, no doubt.
What are we learning about people that may have been infected with COVID at some point over the last year? There's a new study that shows they may have a longer-term immunity, right?
That's right. So the question was from the beginning, I mean, if you had COVID, you have some antibodies, of course, but how long do they last, and do they create any immunity? So a recent study published in Nature, which is a highly prestigious scientific journal, of course, on May 24, in a relatively small number of patients, 18 patients were studied, and they had what we call a bone marrow biopsy to look for plasma cells or long-living plasma cells. And these are the cells that create antibodies. And even 11 months after the initial symptoms of COVID, those patients had an abundant amount of those long-living plasma cells, which still produced antibodies to a lower amount, of course, than initially in the course of the infection, but still there's a potential of antibody protection. And that could theoretically mean a lifelong immunity. Keep in mind, these were patients, mainly non-hospitalized patients with very mild COVID symptoms. We don't have any data on those who were really sick, but it's a good step in the right direction.
It's really interesting. And are they looking at if the vaccine may work like this as well for people that are vaccinated?
Absolutely. And there are studies underway now to look exactly at that, and also to do bone marrow biopsies in patients who had received a vaccine to see if we can detect those long-living plasma cells and their antibody production over a long period of time.
It's just fascinating. It's so interesting to find out. All right, and finally, let's leave you with June 15th in California. A lot of things will be changing. Restrictions will be lifted. The mask mandate will be dropped for most people that are fully vaccinated and in most places. Will we see a big change in the way just that life gets back to normal on June 15th?
Well, I think so. I mean, from my experience this morning being on the freeway, I mean, everything is back to normal. And I think we're going in the right direction, which is horrible with regard to the traffic in the LA area, as you know very well, Joe. But overall, I think we're all welcoming a near normal life back, hopefully within 2 weeks.
Dr. Ernst von Schwarz, thank you so much for joining us. We always learn something when we talk to you, and that long-term immunity is something that a lot of us are going to be keeping an eye on as we get more studies on that. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Joe.